cleanse your soul. Feel it in your veins, breathe it in, your lungs will stay. It's like love for the first time. It'll all make sense. You know it. It's like love, cleanse your soul. Feel it in your veins, and your lungs will stay.
Good morning to those joining us from India and good evening to those in Australia. I'm Petula Thomas, Director of the Indo-Australian Chamber of Commerce, and on behalf of the Chamber, I'd like to welcome you to this session, R&D and Innovation, Sustainability Innovation. Sustainable technologies, R&D and innovation is a priority area. Much is being done in this space by both Australia and India. Collaboration is key, and what the session aims to do is to bring sustainability back to the forefront of conversations with an impressive panel of speakers from both countries. So the panel will discuss the steps companies, government, and individuals could take to align our immediate pandemic response with the longer-term imperatives of sustainability. And how will technology help balance economic imperatives with sustainability considerations in a post-COVID world? So very much, something that we all would like to know about. So to moderate this discussion, we are fortunate to have with us Ms. Michelle Lemons, Head of Business Sustainability and CTO APAC, Tata Consultancy Services, TCS. So in this role, Michelle is responsible for championing initiatives with stakeholders to bring the depth of TCS, research and innovation, and COIN to deliver measurable economic, social, environmental outcomes that have industry relevance. Michelle is passionate about the opportunities for businesses to embrace more sustainable business models by harnessing the power of innovation and digital in the way they operate and champion change for a better triple bottom line. A few housekeeping points to note before I hand over. In order to reduce background noise, all microphones will be muted during this session, apart from the person speaking. At the end, the panel will take questions. You can use the question section on the right-hand side to ask questions. Please note, we are recording the session, and the recorded version of it will be made available to delegates and participants. It's also being streamed live. All sessions of this Tech and Innovation Virtual Trade Mission are being streamed live on the Indo-Australian Chamber of Commerce's YouTube channel. So with that, I'll hand over to Michelle. We're keen to feed in some of the outcomes of this discussion into a paper that we'll be submitting to both governments after this initiative. And I look forward to what I'm sure will be a very fascinating discussion. Over to you, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Petulia. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our session today that focuses on the role of innovation and technology as enablers of sustainability outcomes. Thanks to the Indo-Australian Chamber of Commerce and the co-sponsors who've helped bring this event together today. As we gather, we're at the beginning, we're starting to see a path ahead clearing for us. A post-COVID world is starting to come to light. Emerging from the uncertainties that we have, we're seeing clearly the sustainability challenges that are facing all of us, ensuring that we have enough for all forever. A few of the most fundamental priorities that we need to address collectively include climate change, inequity, biodiversity loss, and food security, to name a couple. Many of us were really concerned when the pandemic hit that we might lose the momentum in our sustainability pursuit. But instead, we've been reassured by the leaders' increased focus on sustainability. And this focus is demonstrating that sustainability and its increased awareness and focus may well be the most important mindset shift that comes out of this time. So let me say that again, the most important mindset shift that will come out of this time. Alongside these events, we've seen tremendous examples of collaboration around innovation has accelerated solutions. New knowledge sharing models have helped bring to market vaccines, as an example, much ahead of the standard development life cycles. We've seen corporates step in and support their employees and partners and communities in ways that demonstrate walking the talk around a purpose-led business. We've also seen corporates committing to net zero carbon emissions by 2050 or earlier. We've seen the US rejoining the Paris Climate Accord, and we've seen global giants like China, Japan, and South Korea joining others in their commitment to dramatically reduce their emissions. Investors are another line, and we've seen them placing increased importance on the investments that they're making. They're looking for longer-term ESG-based performance, and I don't think there's any doubt that the capital redirect is apparent for all to see. There's also little doubt that regulations and requirements for increased disclosure and compliance are going to continue to increase as governments and regulators look to affect their role in needing change. And then most critically, our stakeholders, key stakeholders, customers, they're beginning to be aware of the role that they play in influencing that change. And they're looking to try and affect that in their spend, in their networks, to ensure the right type of progress is being made. And the same thing applies to our suppliers and our business partners. At TCS, we believe this is the time for sustainability-led rethink. We think there is a major opportunity to re-examine the business models that we've run for many years using a sustainability lens. This means thinking about how we design future-fit businesses, more resilient businesses, based on looking at our end-to-end value chain, looking at how we source, how we use those resources, how we might waste some of those, how we might reuse or throw away, and also how we invest in initiatives that support more sustainable development that's aligned with company purpose. And before you start to think that I might never get to digital innovation, be assured that there's little doubt in my mind that the winning trifecta for us all is about harnessing innovation and technology that is sustainably aligned business strategy, and that's both for companies and our ecosystems. My name is Michelle Lemons, and I lead the APAC Business Sustainability and CTO function for TCS. TCS, for those of you who are not aware, is a global leader in information technology services and digital and business solutions. We partner with businesses to simplify, strengthen, and transform their businesses, along with our global partners and co-innovation, as we call it, networks. We have around 470,000 people in 46 countries, and we have recently become the world's largest IT firm by market cap. We're very proud to be part of the Tata Group and have purpose at our very core. We're also pleased to be a platinum sponsor of these events this week. The speakers I'm very privileged to be sharing this session with today bring with them an amazing wealth of experience. Together, we're covering the diversity of new energy models, cybersecurity, manufacturing of tractors and farm equipment, and in their roles, they have been creators of new tech, navigators and mentors for startups, entrepreneurs, sustainability technologists and champions. And we are all passionate about the opportunity for us to better harness digital and innovation to help companies on their sustainability journey to do well and do good. Let me introduce Jackie Nelson from Deco Secure, who's in Australia today, James Miller from Taste Tractors and Farm Equipment, dialing in from India, and Yvonne Power from Village Energy, also based in Australia. Yvonne may have intermittent camera on and off today, given some of her power fluctuations. I think all of us have been around all these webinars to know that these things happen. Unfortunately, Madhurima is unable to join us from NetApp today as she's a little unwell, unfortunately. I know the speakers are going to share more about themselves as we hear their insights and perspectives today, but in case you'd like to know more, please refer to their online program. And as mentioned, we're looking to have about 15 minutes of quick Q&A time at the end to address some of the queries and insights that you might want to share for this session. So let's go ahead and kick off our first theme for today. So Yvonne, I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about your business, your view on sustainability as part of a responsible corporate. Are there some specific initiatives or issues that you're trying to address? And also the hard question, is sustainability a trade-off or is it part of the business? Yvonne, over to you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. I'm really hoping that I'm audible. And if you do lose me at any point, please do let me know, because as Michelle mentioned, I'm having some problems with power today, which is pretty ironic. Hello everyone, thanks very much for inviting me to the panel today. It's an absolute pleasure to be part of this panel. I am the co-founder and COO of Village Energy. We're an energy technology company, but we're also a social enterprise that's working at the centre of quite a complex energy transition. And what I mean by that is we know that the energy landscape is changing. It's obviously been changing for some time. We need to be sustainable and we need to move away from fossil fuels to renewables and away from what traditionally has been quite a centralised one-directional power system to something that's much more multi-directional, with energy flowing in lots of different directions and energy coming from really millions of different sources like rooftop solar or battery storage or electric vehicles. And I think that obviously the role of digital innovation is going to be really central in meeting that challenge. So for Village Energy, we really see ourselves as having two customers. Our main customer is working with utilities, but we also service end consumers of energy. And we're currently working across the Asia Pacific in both developing and developed markets. And we have live projects over in India. So Village Energy has developed a solution that really looks to try and optimise the social, technical and commercial performance of electricity distribution systems. And typically at the edge of the grid, and we do this using AI and not infrastructure. And we have developed a software and hardware enabled platform that captures sub-household level supply and demand data, and then we apply machine learning algorithms and artificial intelligence to control the grid in real time. End user consumers for us participate in that system via a mobile app, and we give them control over their demand and spend and help enhance their customer experience. And I guess for us, we've really come at this from the perspective of building an end-to-end solution that's a win-win for everyone. So our solution looks to benefit the utility, but also reward the consumer and reduce climate impact. For utilities, I think this will look like lower operating costs and better service quality and ability to meet growing demand and renewable energy targets. But for consumers, it's going to look a lot more like improved reliability, lower bills and spend, and access to renewables. And over time, obviously, those renewables are going to displace polluting alternatives. And I think to answer your question, Michelle, about whether we can have a balance between profitability and sustainability, I think we definitely can. And I don't think it's always an easy balance to strike, but it's certainly a balance that should be central to business models. And more businesses, I think, should be focusing on trying to solve some of these really complex problems in a socially responsible way.
Thanks, Yvonne. I think there's some great points in there. I mean, the importance of renewable is obvious to everybody, and it is great that that's a core part. And I think the idea of exploring different business models is really important as well. So thank you for those thoughts. James, could I throw to you?
Sure. Good morning. Hopefully you can hear me. Connectivity issues earlier, but that's digital and that's innovation for us, isn't it? I'm afraid. Yes, I mean, for us, TAFE is tractors and farm equipment. So the clue's in the title. We're a manufacturer of tractors and farm equipment. We are the third largest by volume in the world. So our role really is inextricably linked to sustainability. We can't get away from that fact when it comes down to farming. Our vision, of course, is to be the first choice amongst the farming community, and our focus is always on enabling farmers to improve their yield and productivity whilst caring for the environment. And of course, that means they need healthy crops, as does the rest of the world. The company itself is now celebrating its 60th year of bringing farm mechanisation to India. We've done that through those years with some well-known household brands of Massey Ferguson, Aisha, and the more recently acquired IMT. So, you know, these are well-known brands. It makes us very much at the centre of the farming community from that point of view. But since the inception of the company, we were very early on, making sure that we brought training and education to farmers, dealers, and obviously all the company staff on how to maximise the benefits of mechanisation, of better agri practices, and taking advantage of years of knowledge and technology. We do that through a product training centre at our J Farm facility just outside Chennai. We also have one up in Rajasthan, and we've developed a couple over in Africa as well. So for us, you know, bringing together farm mechanisation equipment, best practices in agri, and connecting the farmer to our products and our services, it very much makes it very much part of the same equation. It's not a trade-off for us at all.
Thanks, James. And I think, look, you're in a quite a unique position as well. Developing countries, smallholders have a very different challenge in how do we bring technology and bring cost-effective solutions to those parties versus more developed markets. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that later. Jackie, can I bring the question across to you?
Yes, hi there. Hi, everyone. Jackie Nelson. I'm the CEO of Deco Secure, coming in from Canberra today, which is our nation's capital. So a little bit about Deco Secure. So Deco is an Australian cybersecurity company. We're actually very quickly transitioning from startup to scale-up stage, which is really exciting for us. And there's absolutely no doubt about it that COVID has helped us increase our reach and take our product set to the market. So essentially, we build technology tools that enable companies to be able to share and collaborate in total privacy in the cloud. And like I said, in the times that we live in, we all know the importance of that. So as an organisation, sustainability means a whole lot of things. But in direct relation to the question, our tech is about helping organisations transition to better and more efficient ways of working. And we do this by helping organisations that have actually relied on legacy systems for a long time. We help them replace physical, cumbersome and antiquated workflows. And as a result of this, we help them transition from manual practices that may have stayed in place because the necessary digital security wasn't available to them. And as a result of this, we help them drive really deep efficiencies through their systems. We reduce risk for them primarily. We save them money. We reduce human stress. In many instances, we help in terms of in some of the law enforcement channels that we work in. We help a lot around occupational health and safety, making sure the relevant people are actually staying on the task that they need to do to keep us all safe. And as a result of that, it makes organisations more profitable and therefore more sustainable. Yeah. Thanks,
Jackie. I appreciate those thoughts. And as you said, the good to hear them moving from startup into full scale and the progress with that. It's always an interesting journey.
Absolutely.
So if I look at the next, our topic asks us to consider how tech will balance with economic outcomes and sustainability. So it's suggesting there's a balance between sustainability and economic. I guess I'd like to take that question a little bit broader, because when we think about sustainability, we're thinking about the impact that an organisation has on the people and the planet through the goods and services that they deliver. And that has a very much an external focus. And so we're thinking about people, profit and planet. So I wanted to go to James again and ask you, do you think we can see tech as a force for good, for better outcomes across more than just an economic parameters? And if so, how?
Yeah, absolutely. Technology as a whole really should be for us to support increased yield and productivity across the farms. It's available globally already. You look at the scale of operations, particularly in Australia, and the size of equipment that's in use in farming in Australia. And that technology very much is there to ensure productivity is there and the yield is maximised. If we bring that back to India, of course, the challenge is the demographic of farms in India, and it's quite different. You require different solutions here. 80% of the farms in India are less than 1 hectare. The largest farms, just to put this in perspective, it barely figures on the smallest farm scale of Australia. So that gives a completely different set of challenges for bringing those sorts of solutions of technology into India. We couldn't apply the same 400 horsepower tractor with multi-row seed drills on a 1 hectare site. The tractor would take up most of it. So that gives you a perspective of the kind of challenges that we would have bringing such technology on a sustainable basis. In terms of what the farmers can actually afford, though, that's what brings the challenge. And I know my colleague, Mr. Keshvan, touched on this in a session yesterday. You have to bring a technology that that the farmers can afford. It has to be usable, and it has to be usable at the time that they need it as well. So the key question really for us is, how do we get affordable, appropriate technology to improve yield on the farms, and obviously with the India objective of doubling the farmer's income, which of course is very much a case of what's required. And that does require us to think of different business models and different economics for it. And to do that, there are ways of getting connection to the farmers, bringing mechanisation to the farmers that cannot afford a tractor, and the means of connecting that through technology and digital technology at its core is what we're going to need going forward.
I'm pretty sure, James, if I gave you another 10 minutes, you'd easily be able to fill that in just on that topic alone. I think there's some interesting things you talked about affordability and how do we design new business models. And I think there's, if we look at our core products and services, something like yours, we can see how it turns as a service. I think some of the interesting parts for sustainability is where we start to think about non-traditional things turning into as a service. Whether that be looking at some of your mobile phones and your technology. We never actually own the product, and the actual requirements to break that back down and recycle it stays with the actual producer. Also, as IKEA was trialing as a service furniture. And I think this is one of my favourite topics, and I could go on for a long time as well, but I shan't do that, I promise. One of the things, if I could now just, Yvonne, if I could draw on your ideas around this and tech as a force for good, versus just profitability. I'd be interested in your perspectives on this. I think we've lost Yvonne by the looks of that. So I'm going to ask her that when we come back. Unless, Jackie, you had something you wanted to add, but I didn't want to put you on the spot there, which I just have done instead of. So let me go to the next question, Jackie, instead.
Okay,
so,
no problem.
Yeah?
Yeah, don't move on. Yeah, sure, that's fine.
Great. So look, as part of the pandemic, organisations have understood that a strong digital core is paramount to helping businesses with flexibility and resilience. I think that was one of the most used words in 2020. And the digital initiatives that have launched and have accelerated have driven customer employee engagement, optimization, and business growth. And I'm wondering how we can build business sustainability into these initiatives. I'd be interested in your views on that, Jackie.
Yeah, great. It's a really interesting topic, and probably one of my favourite ones, given the time we're living through at the moment. We do see light at the end of the COVID tunnel. But I think it's certainly in terms of the security space, and we're a cybersecurity company. We think about security at the core of everything that we do. I think we've made leaps and bounds in terms of seeing organisations have security much more top of mind and start to move to more sustainable security models. And I think that happened because when COVID hit, it was a huge challenge, and it caught many organisations pretty much asleep at the wheel. enabling, to be agile and to be able to respond to the multitude of challenges, and remote work, and adding security and allowing people to access their work and get their jobs done. So true innovation, I think, fortunately for us, was about looking forward and being able to plan for some of the problems that we couldn't foresee happening, and COVID was a classic example of that. But during COVID, flexibility and resilience suddenly had to coexist, because we had all of these people now suddenly dispersed and not able to access their infrastructure. And on top of the global pandemic, we found ourselves facing unbelievably sophisticated and persistent cyber warfare. I mean, you don't have to, or every single person in every part of the globe knows some of the geopolitical challenges that played into that, and it became a very, very serious problem for organisations. But the good thing is that even before COVID, many organisations were actually wanting to transition to a more flexible model of working, because it is more sustainable on both the human and the environmental front. But they struggled to do it because technology didn't allow them to be flexible and resilient. And when we think about resilience and we refer to it in terms of cybersecurity, we talk about technologies that are innovative, and being innovative in today's world is about them being secure by design. Because, I guess the one thing that is going to make any business, be it from a small business to critical infrastructure or governments, is that they have a huge cyber attack or a breach, and that makes that lack of business continuity makes any business completely unsustainable in today's world. So, yeah.
Thank you for those thoughts. Appreciate that, Jackie. And James, if I wanted to throw to you and ask you a similar question, I mean, food security is a key problem as we, come to grips with having 2 billion more people on the planet within less than the next 20 years. And different problems in different parts of the world. In developing, we can't get the food to market. In developed, we end up wasting it once it's got to market. The estimates are around 30% on both sides of that. And so technology is a real enabler of how do we help the farmers, increase their yield, reduce wastage, and optimize some of that. And so really interested to hear your perspective on bringing sustainability into your initiatives end to end.
Yeah, I think just to really reinforce the question that you were asking at the beginning as well, a strong digital core is fundamental to that. Even before COVID struck, we've always been focusing on affordable precision agricultural practices. We've got a longer term vision of getting towards this fully connected smart farm, which will enable everything from the source of all of the input costs, the source of fertilizer, seeds, right the way through to the end user, so they can see exactly what they've got on their plate. I think in terms of precision agri, at an event a couple of years ago, the CII summarised it very well by saying, primary aim of precision agri was to ensure profitability, efficiency and sustainability while protecting the environment. And they went on to say that, it's making use of the data gathered through the technology to make or enable immediate and future decisions on everything. For us in precision agri, it's everything from applying a particular rate to when is the best time to apply that chemical, that fertilizer, that seed, and when to harvest. Extend that slightly further still and link it to doubling the farmer's income, not just when to harvest, but where to sell as well, and where to get the best revenue for that particular product. And that can bring everything connected. And we've got to work through how to turn the on-farm situations into data that can be analysed. We can issue a response, prescriptions, give the farmer the inputs that they need to make those key decisions every day. And at the end of the day, they'll need that information at the right time. They'll need to ensure that they're going to be resilient to all of the things the world's going to throw at it, whether it's COVID, whether it's climate change. There are many variables that will be challenging the farmers going forward. And ultimately, of course, as you rightly pointed out, the consumer's going to depend on this going forward. We're in a world where we've got ever more mouths to feed. What number that will be in the end, who knows? Who knows what's going to be around the corner after what we've just been through with COVID. But really what it's all about is making sure that through the use of this data, we can ensure this maximum yield and we can minimise the inputs such as water, fertiliser, chemicals, and make sure that it's all sustainable.
Thanks, James. There's many points in there. I mean, the transparency I wanted to pick up on, because I think that's one of the key things when we're talking goods and services that it is becoming, not might become, it is becoming increasingly important. Whether that be the source of the product or service that you've got in front of you, and that could be your vegetables or your fish. It could be the laptop and the componentry that's come out of that. And that can be done from multiple perspectives, but also from something that's hit Australia, obviously, in the last couple of years, which is around modern slavery. If I go to somewhere like Singapore, we have extended producer responsibility, which means you're not just responsible for the work that you do and you keep your blinkers on for those who supplied it to you. Their responsibility extends, and that's picked up on things that were developed on Europe, and that will continue to change. And I think the other thing, James, that I wanted to pick up from what you were saying is something that we've found at TCS as well, is this ability to use digital to leapfrog, to reach what has been a less accessible, maybe less literate group of individuals. And so with the solutions you're talking about and that we have as well, we're able to do outreach and avoid that step of having to do full education around language and literacy. And actually, we've all got mobile phones. And actually, we can use those technologies to help enable the decisions at that front line for all types of people, whether that be access to medical information or access to, you don't need to put chemicals on that plant. It's looking just fine from my drone up there or from my IoT sensor that's in the ground. The water is just good. Leave it be for now. We don't need to waste anything. And so I wanted to take the opportunity. Great to see you back, Yvonne. Thank you for that.
Sorry about that.
No problems. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you absolutely fine.
Fantastic. So can I ask you to touch on how your digital and innovation journeys and sustainability blueprints have changed as a result of the pandemic? Has there been any change, some change? If so, what?
Yeah, sure. I think the brief answer is, well, yes. I think everybody's experienced changes in one way or another. Village Energy is headquartered in Australia. So, and as I mentioned previously, we've got live projects over in India, and we've got agreements in a number of other countries as well. So for us, COVID-19 presented an immediate logistical challenge, especially in terms of our team's mobility. So we went from obviously, am I still audible? Have you lost me again? I'm back. Fingers crossed. So I went from visiting India almost monthly to obviously being grounded in Australia. We've always relied quite heavily on virtual collaboration just because we're quite geographically spread, and we've always had an emphasis on digital deployment and engagement because we've got quite large scale ambitions. But I think for us, one of the immediate changes really accelerated our shift away from physical interactions and deployments and tested our ability to almost solely rely on our digital platforms to support our customers and consumers by necessity. So it sort of accelerated a lot of our journey that we were planning to go on from a technical perspective. We did actually learn as well, because we're supporting customers over in India, we're engaging with them through a mobile phone app. We actually learned that they coped a lot better than they otherwise would have access to digital support, and they also were able to do things like prepay for energy, which is something else that we provide through our app. Just from a safety perspective for them, they could pay for bills digitally as opposed to having to physically go and make payments, which was great. And one of the other things that we've always had as part of our business model is a strategic partnership model where we partner locally with NGOs and CSR implementation partners. And I think that really came to its fore post-COVID-19 as well, and that's something that we've probably put a lot more emphasis into. And I think that as well, one of the other things that we've probably accelerated is just a broadening of our platform solution to address problems that are being experienced in more mature energy markets, like how to deal with really high levels of rooftop PV on a system. And it's meant that we started to look at different markets in response to COVID-19. So I think from that perspective, it's had quite a large impact on us as well. And I think for us, we've seen the utilities that we work with being a lot more open to exploring the role of technology as a way of future-proofing. And I think that there's a greater recognition now that consumers are also going to have. I'm just waiting for myself to come back there. Am I back again?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just finishing off, I think, but I was just as a final point saying that, and you touched on it before, Michelle, that customer expectations are a lot higher in terms of the role of technology and the choices that means that they can make. And I think as businesses, there's a greater recognition that that's going to provide a competitive edge. So we've seen that there's been a lot more rhetoric around the involvement of technology, which has been quite exciting for us.
Thanks, Yvonne. You did well with the multiple ins and outs. So well done on that.
I hope I was legible.
I think that, yeah, you were very, very good. I think the customer choice piece is only going to increase as we go forward. And the key will be for us to how do we inform both retail customers such as ourselves, but also business customers. And so, James, you mentioned before about transparency. And that's not just in a consumer purchase, it's also coming through very strongly in business partnerships, where some of our major business partners are going, you know what, I have a significant amount of spend, whether that be on electronic equipment or some other. How do I actually deal with a company who is sustainable at their core and is bringing that good, not just to the shareholders, but actually to all stakeholders that they're dealing with in their businesses? And so I think that will only increase as we go forward. Thanks, Yvonne. Jackie, I'm back to you. Can I ask your view? There is so much technology and there's so much innovation out there. Are there particular technologies, capabilities that you think will be the most important in helping us progress sustainable development? And by that, I mean across that people, profit, planet, across SDGs, across accessibility. What do you think are the biggest things that we should be looking to harness and leverage?
Yeah, look, I think that, it's a really good question. And obviously, when I look at the world through our lens, we think about security. Like connectivity is absolutely essential and really important. The way we gather data points, the way we share those in terms of, I think you and I spoke the other day about the Microsoft Planetary computing system and the amount of data that's going to hold about really critical infrastructure things, our land, our environment, all of those waterways. And so for us here, we really... at Deco, we're very, very concerned about what happens to that data when it's sitting in the cloud. How do we secure it? How do we make sure that you can share that information securely? And I think that at the absolute core of everything that happens in technology that goes forward, we have to start to see every organisation think about security as sort of the entry point. We talk about it as secure by design. We believe that we have to have secure platforms that allow everything to happen on top of that. So we don't want to make security an add-on or an optional extra for organisations. So I think the only sustainable way to make sure that we stay truly connected, we can share, and we can make sure that we do sustainable work is to think about security.
Yeah, and that accessibility and security is just continuing to increase. As we all realise how our information is being used in what places or not, if we've done it well enough. Look, we've got got less than 10 minutes left, probably about 7-8 minutes before we go to our Q&A. And so I'm going to change things around a little bit. So James, ears on. The last question is about really trying to bring some of these thoughts together and look at our partnerships and the way that we structure some of our businesses. And so leading businesses might propose that there's no business to be had on a dead planet. And while that sounds pretty extreme, if we continue to not look after our planet, we lose our sourcing, we are not able to produce, and hence there's no income, and hence we end up back to that statement, on a dead planet, there's no business to be had. And so as corporates look to address the role that they can play across the board in social, environment, and economic impacts, that's obviously going to have an impact on the way that we structure our businesses, our partnerships, and how we compete. And so I'm wondering, in your businesses, how do you see that changing as we look to rebalance some of the perspectives that we take? And are there new business models out there? Are there greater ecosystems plays that we need to bring in? Is there new innovation? Is there different ways of working? And so, Jackie, let me come to you first, and then Yvonne, and then James.
Poor Jackie, it's her turn. I'm just in response to are there new business models out there? I think, yeah, absolutely. I believe there are new business models out there. I think it's easy to solve a problem at the expense of something else. I think the real challenge for corporates is to do well by doing good, and solving a problem in a way that it benefits everyone. And that's not easy, but I think that COVID has probably reinforced for us our fragility and the fragility of our place on this planet. And we're now refocusing on social impact, and I think there's a renewed sense of urgency around that. And I think there'll be a greater and deeper commitment to sustainability as a result. And I think we're already seeing that. As we begin to emerge from the pandemic now, I think more and more companies will be reevaluating their social impact strategies and exploring more innovative and creative alliances and partnerships. And I really hope that what we begin to see in 2021 now is the private sector starting to dig a bit deeper in terms of SDG impacts and targets, and looking at quite innovative ways to combine revenue and impact. I think from a technology sector perspective, the technology sector's always been an early adopter of ecosystem type business models. We've seen that with a lot of the disruptive business models that have been coming from the tech sector. And I think that COVID-19 is only going to amplify that and accelerate it, because people are being forced to think outside the box and find new value streams. We're already seeing, I think, as well, an increase in capital and investment in impact enterprises. So it makes sense, I think, that businesses are going to start to find new ways to work with governments or NGOs, or possibly even with competing firms under a common language of the SDGs.
I think you bring up a really great point, Yvonne. Thanks for that. And I think that, the SDGs give us a common language, and that's one of the biggest and best things that they've done, that we have this idea of working towards a greater good, but actually that we all need to work together. And I think companies have taken some time to internalize those and understand which ones they can affect. And now is the time in the decade of action, as it's called, to now step up and figure out how to do that. And also, climate action requires us to work together, because, as you said, you push one part of it and something else blows out. And that's the thing that we actually need to consider it end to end. And circular economy is a great example in that light, where we actually have the opportunity to rethink what was a waste-oriented society into remining those components and including them as an asset rather than a cost. And so I think there's a whole bunch in there. And TCS has spent a good amount of time invested in terms of our foundations, but also our core work around skilling, but also social entrepreneurship. And so if we get time, We might come back to that because I think that's another one, along with NGOs and different business models, that I think will start to play a much greater role. James, I'm going to come to you next, given we've lost poor Jackie again. I'd love to hear from you, please.
Yeah, sure. Technology is letting us down again, unfortunately. It's a challenge. But really, just to pick up on your point, the environment and social side of things, and how corporates can, really change the way they look at things, the way they work on things. CSR will play a major role in that, in terms of future sustainability, how it interacts with the wider environment. I mentioned earlier about the demographic of farms across India. 1.2 million farms are out there of sub 1 hectare, which makes up 80% of the farms. And barely 50% are mechanised, which means there's another 50% who do not have access to tractors and farm equipment. So one initiative that TAFE has been pushing forward with over the last few years is our J Farm Services app. It connects farmers with other farmers so they can rent tractors and farm equipment, simple as that, which enables those who haven't got the equipment to make use of it. And just really to bring that into perspective, when the COVID lockdown came around, the timing was terrible for farmers in India. It was just at the point of harvest time. Lockdown kicked in. Farmers needed, obviously, to gather in their harvest, process their crop, and more importantly, of course, for the following season, was to prepare the land ready for the monsoon season. And there was no labour. The labour disappeared, couldn't move. And this was a problem the world over, of course. There's always labour requirements at these peak seasons. And what we decided to do as a company was, for those 2-3 month periods, we just said, right, it's free rental. For 3 states, we covered somewhere in the region of 2.1 million acres across those 3 states. The farmers were able to gather their crops. They were able to then obviously plough the fields after and get ready for the following season. So effectively, that helped save an entire harvest period and crops revenue and crop supply into the supply chain. And really, just to bring those numbers back into perspective, we had somewhere in the region of 53,500 tractors used and 134,000 implements just to do those 2.1 million acres. But it connected everybody through digital. It connected farmers who couldn't really afford to buy the equipment but needed the equipment urgently. It connected where there was no labour available, so people came in to do that work and help out. And I think that in terms of where businesses should be focusing, this is the sort of corporate social responsibility. It's a focus on the environment, focus on the social interaction that can bring real benefit going forward, especially in times when you've got pandemics and climate challenges.
Absolutely, James. Some more great points in there. Thank you so much for sharing. Jackie, we're going to try to go to you.
I don't know what happened. I had all sorts of Wi-Fi issues then. So and I think I'm okay for the minute. So let's just cross our fingers. It was my turn to drop out, right? Surely.
It was. And hopefully I'm not going to have my turn. I'm good with that. So we're on the question that's talking about, are there new business models? Are there different partnerships, different ecosystem plays that we need to be thinking about things differently as we go into this new environment where we're trying to look at economic as well as environment as well as social outcomes? I'd be interested in your perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that in relation to cybersecurity, we have a major issue on our hands. I think no business is immune. And I think if we don't all work together and collaborate and share some of, intel around finding better ways to make our businesses more secure, I think we have a great opportunity to work with some of the people in Five Eyes and the nation states to help us solve through some of this.
We'll just give her a sec to see if she comes back. No, we've lost her again. Okay. Just while we're waiting for her to come back, those of you who are listening in the audience, we'd love to hear some of your questions. So there's a Q&A box on the screen. Encourage you to ask questions for Yvonne and James, myself, Jackie, on some of the things that you've heard today. You may be going, that's great, where do I start? And so let me ask that question. Maybe that's a good question for me to kick on to, given we haven't seen Jackie come back in. So this is a bit of an impromptu one, James and Yvonne. Jackie, did you want to finish off?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Okay, Wi-Fi is very bad. Okay, so I'm going to put you on hold, Jackie, and I will go to James and Yvonne again. And so the question, hopefully you've now got your thoughts in order. An organisation that maybe has been very focused on driving value for their customers and their shareholders, but are hearing about sustainability. They've got the large digital core maybe, and they really want to innovate. Where might somebody start? Whichever one of you want to pick that one up first, I'm good to go. So where might you advise an organisation to start thinking about sustainability and digital innovation together?
I'm happy to go first while I'm here. I think for me, I mean, if you've got a massive amount of data at your disposal, I think probably the first step for us would be to think about the customer problems. What problems are customers actually facing, and how might that data set that you've got access to be something that could help in solving that problem. So as a practical example for us, something that we realised we were able to do with our platform was that we obviously had a lot of data that we were getting from, have I dropped out? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear you and see you.
Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I think we've lost Michelle.
I think we actually lost Michelle now. James, are you able to hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
You are?
Yep.
All right, well, I'll maybe continue and just give my example, and then James, you can jump in.
I'll carry on.
We have a lot of data that we have access to through our platform, that we were able to build up a bit of a profile of our consumers and how they consume energy and how regularly they pay for their energy. So we were building up almost like a proxy credit rating for them, and we came up with the idea that maybe we could actually offer them access to financing so that they could purchase productive appliances or rooftop solar. So I guess that's a practical example of how you can think about different kinds of use cases for your data set and think about it in a sustainable way. Michelle, you dropped out, so I just finished up, and I think, James, you were going to jump in now.
Yep, I think the timing of that one was perfect. Thank you. Thanks, James.
No, I think you touched on some good points there, Yvonne. And, you know, from a farming side of things, it's all about the inputs as well, and labour. That's the other part of it. So if we've got data available, whether that's through satellite imagery, drone imagery, we can immediately identify anything from pests to disease in the crops. We could pinpoint that, and we could send the farmer, the agronomist, to the field at the right time and in the right location. You know, rather than just general go and spray everything and you know, continue polluting the soil, the water sources, and everything else. Well, just go and target particular areas, and with that data available. Obviously, it means the input costs are lower, the labour effort is lower, and it's a much more sustainable model. The challenge, I think, we're all going to go through, and never mind the connectivity challenge that we're seeing, is how to process that data through AI/ML and really cut out the expertise in the middleman and embed it into the systems that gives the farmer the information he needs at the point he needs it.
And I'm pleased that you touched on some AI.
Lost you, Michelle.
I think we're still here.
Back.
Lost you, Michelle.
So you're back. Yep. Everybody disappeared then. That was a particularly good one. There was nobody left to carry the talking. So you know what? I'm going to take advantage and hopefully. So Jackie, we've been doing a bit of dynamic questioning. I don't know if you have anything that you wanted to finish off from the points that you were making before. Yes, let me give you 2 minutes and then I'll come back with a new question, or if you're okay to go into a new question, I can do that.
I'm happy to go into a new question. I'm just hoping there weren't some cyber gremlins inside the system that suddenly made us disappear. I keep dropping in and out. I don't know whether it's the Wi-Fi. So move on, Michelle. That's fine.
Okay. So look, for those of you who are listening out there, we'd love to see a question. To the organisers, I can't see any questions. In case you can, perhaps let me know, but I'm not seeing any questions to pick up. So in case there are, maybe just jump in. Otherwise, I'll ask another question. So another area that, we talked about a little bit earlier was around SDGs. So for those of you who maybe haven't heard too much about the SDGs, developed by the United Nations, we cemented them about 2015. They came out of millennial goals and also a lot of work saying we needed to start working on the inequities and leave no one behind. And so SDGs are one of those great tools that allow us to work across different tools. And so I wanted to just touch on SDGs in your organizations. Maybe you've not dealt with them a lot. Maybe you've brought them into some of your discussions, maybe with government. Do I have everybody back? Looks like it.
Yep.
Let's try that again. So hopefully you heard my question, which was talking about SDGs and talking about how are you using them either within your organization or in partnerships, and or addressing what are the other organizations, NGOs. A couple of you mentioned NGOs, and I think that's really interesting, not-for-profit, that you're using to help fulfill some of your sustainability. James, I'm not sure if we've got you back and you can hear me.
Yep, back. Can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you as well. Hopefully you heard the question. Yeah.
Not all of it. Not all of it.
Go with what, so part of it was on SDGs.
Yeah, SDGs, sustainable development.
And the second part is if that's not something, then talk about the different relationships like government and NGOs to bring about greater sustainable outcomes.
Yeah. I mean, we as a company, we have to work hand in hand with government and farming associations to make sure that we deliver what the farmer needs. Our focus really, as I said at the very beginning, is all about the farmer. It's all about the seed, minimising inputs. So sustainable delivery for us is, it's not a new thing as such. It's something that's at the core of the company. And we've worked with, as I was alluding to earlier, with the J Farm Services app. It's not a profit model at all. It's a CSR activity. We work with governments in various states across India to ensure that gets out to the farming community wholesale. It's not about our products. It's about all of them.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt you, James. My apologies.
No,
Okay.
carry on.
Yvonne, I think we've got you. Let me quickly see if we can get a jump in.
Let's give it a crack, shall we? Okay. Sustainable development goals. I think, yes, they are relevant for us because I think indirectly they've just been something that we're concerned with, but also we work with government quite a lot too. So we've got strong relationships with Australian government, with Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. So obviously coming into other countries, especially developing nations, there's usually quite a strong emphasis on the SDGs. I think for us, probably the most relevant ones are obviously climate change, so climate action and affordable and clean energy. They're obvious for us, but then there are, thinking about this holistic approach and having a social impact type business model, we do spend quite a bit of time thinking through what else can we touch on, such as gender equality. Wherever we go, we try to empower women and actually give them roles in our deployment and roles in the community long-term working with us. And obviously access to energy is an enabler to economic development is obviously quite a key thing. So we spend quite a bit of time thinking through those things as well. Am I still here? Yep, good. And obviously in a lot of the developing nations that we work with as well, poverty is an issue. So that's something else that we spend quite a bit of time trying to alleviate, thinking through the levers that we can pull to provide new revenue streams for people as part of our business model as well.
Looks like we've lost Michelle again.
I think we've lost Michelle again, haven't we?
Yep. Just
No,
coming back now, maybe.
I'm back again. I'm going
Welcome
to
back.
go to closing. Yeah, I know. Let me reserve comment. So look, I can't see any questions, so I'm going to ask us. I think let's try and do this. I haven't seen Jackie back, so maybe I'll go to James and then Yvonne, and if we have Jackie do that. Just 30 seconds. It would be good if there was one message that you'd want to share or want to leave people with. We've covered a really broad range of topics, or a question that you'd like them to think about as they leave this session today. Just 30 seconds, be really interested on what that might be.
Yeah. Well, I'll go first then. I think, we've seen, a lot of diverse solutions here today, focusing on technology and sustainability. Obviously, we have a keen focus on net zero, doubling farmers' income and reducing the cost of ownership and ensuring optimum use of resources. Then we can truly help not just farmers, but people in general and the environment overall. So the challenge is, how do we do that in a cost-effective manner?
Yeah, agreed. Yvonne?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, James. I think the challenge is really just if we're going to throw a question or a challenge out to people, it's to think about, how they can build a business model that does consider sustainability and social impact. And I think that from a technology perspective, emerging technologies, especially automation and digitisation, are going to have a key role to play post COVID-19 in I guess a global economic recovery. Profitability and sustainability should coexist, and I think we should really be seizing on this new refocus on climate change and advanced technologies. So I think those would be the key points I'd leave people with.
Thanks, Yvonne. I'm still hopeful, but I think I'm at the point of going, unfortunately, Jackie doesn't look like she's going to be able to rejoin us. And so, look, in my perspective, I think we've covered a large amount. Stakeholders, if we think about those more broadly, are starting to become much more involved in a broader sense. It's not just our customers or our employees. We're talking about our communities. We're also starting to think about future generations in a way that we've never thought before in relation to our businesses. And I think there are brand new business models out there that we haven't, everybody refers to the ones we know, but there are new models coming through and new businesses. Classic example being plastic recycling and plastic reuse. Those sorts of businesses didn't exist before. Battery breakdowns for chemical re-engineering that I was hearing from Tata Chemicals only yesterday. Reuse of vehicles in terms of the reuse from an aluminium perspective when it comes to Tata cars and Jaguar. And I think there's just a lot of different things that if we just allow ourselves to think about our business models a little bit differently, we'll find we're quite creative. And things that we didn't use, like say heat, that is being produced in a sugar processing process, actually can be used to feed the subsequent sets of those processes rather than being wasted. Or your waste, which may be bread, actually can be used as the input to somebody else's business process. And I think that there's a brand new set of opportunities opening for us that we really are only just beginning to see. We've seen in the last 12 months that we're capable of transforming ourselves in a very short period of time when we work together. And so we can all be champions of change. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you to James and to Yvonne. Thanks to Jackie, who obviously is still joining us and it wasn't able to get back in. And thank you to IACC and also for our sponsors to allow us to bring this to you today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We share the light. We share the land. We share this journey. Join us for the adventure. Our country is waiting for you.